Can I see your book for a second? Obtuse, obdurate, imperceptive, dull-witted, doltish.
Not at all. You are well on your way. We'll be reading this sign in no time. You want to come along?
I sure do. Thanks, Dorothy.
Good evening.
Welcome back to Teach English Now. Let's have a brief discussion about what we learned from our discussion between Dorothy and the Scarecrow. First of all, the Scarecrow represents a learner who simply doesn't have a lot of knowledge about reading. You could say that this Scarecrow represents a reader who lacks reading skill. Now, there are many reasons that you might encounter a non-reader like this, and Dorothy basically discovered 5. Let's talk about each one in a bit more detail. Automatic recognition. One reason a person could be a non-reader is that the learner doesn't have automatic recognition skills. In other words, it is the actual letters and the accompanying sounds that are giving the reader problems. This reader simply doesn't know how to decode the letters and sounds to make words. This happens with second language learners a lot because they may have a different alphabet in their first language, Japanese, Chinese, and Arabic, for example. Or even if they do have an understanding of a Roman alphabet, sometimes referred to as Latin script, there are different rules that apply. So a Spanish T, te, is actually pronounced different from an English T, even though they are written the same way. A T, te, in Spanish touches the back of the T and feels softer, whereas an American English T is further back on the alveolar ridge, that weird shaped bump behind your teeth. Finally, some readers are still, to put it simply, trying to figure out how to read, and may not read well yet in their own language. This is especially true if you are teaching younger second language learners. So, what do you do when you identify that the primary problem of your reader is the inability to recognize and decode letters and sounds? First of all, there's a lot for a teacher to learn to help learners decode language. For example, you may want to spend time learning phonics. Phonics refers to a method of teaching learners to read by connecting sounds with letters or groups of letters. But what rules do you start with? What rules should you focus in on? While that can be different from language to language, consider at the very least the 7 major phonics rules for second language learning,
Good evening.
suggested by May and Elliot. 1. The C rule. Hard C in cat is different from soft C in city. 2. The G rule. The hard G from gate is different.
Kate is different from the soft German.
The VC rule. Short vowel sound is usually followed by a consonant, digraph, or blend. For example, back, back, back. 4. The VV rule. When 2 vowels are together, usually the first vowel is long,
Both.
and the second vowel is silent. For example, bo, si. 5. The VCE rule.
Hello.
1-syllable words that end
12
with a
million in the
consonant and
house. Please like,
as a
share,
long
and
vowel
subscribe.
sound. The E is silent. For example, night, plate, 6. The CV rule. Use the long
Hi,
vowel
Adele.
sound when there is only 1 vowel in a word or syllable. For
Good
example,
evening. Good evening, Adele from the Philippines.
7. The R rule. R changes the vowels before them. For example, cat becomes car, feet becomes fear, and cake becomes care. While I will sometimes teach these phonics rules, there is a danger to focusing on sound and letter recognition. Can you guess what that danger is? You may already realize that a focus on sound can often be boring to students, and can get students to think about language as not connected to meaning or culture. In fact, there is a debate between phonics professionals and whole language professionals, a debate that is worth learning about. We have provided a reading to just whet your appetite about that debate. It is a good one, with smart people and proven research on both sides of the coin. Vocabulary and structural knowledge. Another reason a person might be a non-reader is because they lack vocabulary and structural knowledge. For some researchers,
Vocabulary, structural
vocabulary may
knowledge.
be more useful than teaching phonics. For many theorists, not being able to read is linked more directly to the fact that students don't yet know what words mean.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you want to teach someone how to read, teach them to identify vocabulary and simple sentence structure, nouns,
Oh,
verbs,
I see.
adverbs, particles, and so forth. They also argue that with so many ways to make similar sounds in English, for some words it is easier to learn the entire word rather than trying to decode the word using phonics. Reading teachers call these sight words.
Mm.
There are word lists that can help you to identify the top 100, 1,000, and 2,000 most common words, and that can give you an indication of what words to focus on. If you are teaching for academic purposes, consider the academic word list your best friend. Discourse and knowledge of genres. Another important thing that you may have to teach is discourse or genre. I like to think of different genres as different kinds of recipes and help my learners to think about the recipe for a letter and how that might be different from the recipe for an essay or a text message. Teaching learners to be aware of how different genres are written gives them more confidence to read the genres and to predict what will happen next. Having students outline as they read, especially for essays and formal writing, can help students see the structure of the reading and learn to identify common rhetorical patterns.
Good.
World knowledge. Why does a knowledge of genres help students to read? Well, to be honest, a knowledge of anything and everything helps students to read. The more they know about the world, the greater their capacity at prediction. While there have been numerous studies on what makes good readers, almost all reading researchers agree that good readers are good at making predictions, and that good readers tend to have a greater ability to focus on meaning instead of sound. What does that mean for teachers? Well, it means that at least at some point in time, you want to encourage all your readers to practice the skill of predicting. A fancy way to say this is that good readers use semantic cues to help them out. So, what is a semantic cue? And how does it help with prediction? A semantic cue is a clue that helps a reader follow the story. The clue has something to do with meaning and can often be derived from an understanding of the word's relationship to the outside world. So, if I gave you the sentence, the woman sat at her window crying,
while at her feet the child banged on the rattle. What does it mean?
Do you see any clues as to who the woman is and what she is feeling? The child? Do you see clues that might indicate where she is? I am guessing that most of you made the following predictions. 1. The woman is sad, perhaps waiting for someone. 2. The woman could be a mother, and the child is likely her baby. It has a rattle. 3. The rattle is a baby toy, not a snake rattle. Of course.
Correct.
4. The woman is likely in her home or residence, not at a post office. Now, these last two predictions you probably found ridiculous. Of course the rattle is the toy, not the snake rattle. Of course the woman is at home, not at a business office. But remember, when you don't have world knowledge, story knowledge, and semantic cues, reading a story can be terribly confusing. Imagine a poor reader looking through a dictionary and coming to the conclusion that the child is holding onto a snake rattle. That is what happens when you have a lack of ability to recognize semantic cues. That's the importance of predictions. So, when you make predictions, are you always right? Perhaps not. But good readers are fluid in their ability to make predictions and can change their minds quickly. For example, the woman might not be sad. She could be very happy, right? Perhaps she is happy because of something she sees from the window. We simply don't know, but we're willing to find out. In other words, you as a reader are constantly making assumptions and adding and amending your own views of the text. And for you smart readers with lots of world knowledge, you do it almost effortlessly. Reading strategies. Finally, when you teach learners how to read, there are a
Oh,
number of strategies that you will want them to use to understand the text. Understanding a
here
text
in the
may mean that
sky, it
students
might
have
be
to
rain
read,
today.
scan for
Oh,
information, look up words in a dictionary,
airplane.
ask questions to a neighbor, compare information from the story with information elsewhere, and form opinions and think critically about the truthfulness of what they
Mm.
read. In the next module, we'll go over a number of strategies for reading more carefully and discuss two kinds of strategies, extensive and intensive reading strategies
Mm.
in more detail. For
Extensive
now,
and
just
intensive
recognize that
strategy
when
for
you teach
reading.
reading, you are very much
Oh.
like a debate moderator. If you will see reading
Mm.
more as a discussion with learners and their views on one side of the room and a reading with its views and ideas on another side of the room, you will see your role more quickly. You are giving a voice to the reading.
Mm.
You are giving a voice to your learners. And you are trying to see if, through both, a consensus of knowledge can be reached. Is it weird to think of a book or a reading as having a voice? And that students have their own voice and can accept or challenge what the book says? Well, weird or not, that perspective can help change the way you have class discussions and invite learners to read. It's also a useful metaphor to help you with our second problem reader, man. We'll see him in the next video. See you there.
Mm.
Considering the phonics versus whole language debate,
Mhm.
Ashley Garrigan. The phonics approach and the whole language approach are two of the most well-known approaches to teaching reading. You might already be familiar with them, even if you don't know them by name. Because the two approaches think about the process of reading in very different ways, there is an ongoing debate about which method is better for developing reading proficiency. Thinking about theory is one thing, but we each have our own personal experiences with learning to read. I began to wonder about my journey toward reading proficiency. How did my experience of learning to read fit into this debate? To find out, I called my mother and asked her to tell me how I learned to read. Well, we came down the stairs one morning, saw me reading the paper, and said, "I want to do that." So I went out and bought the book Why Johnny Can't Read and a chalkboard. Why Johnny Can't Read, Flesh 1986, was a popular book that advocated teaching reading through phonics. In the phonics approach, the process of reading starts with the word, and beginning readers learn that letters and sounds work together to form words. Edgar, 2001, Freeman and Freeman, 2008,
Phonics.
Hawkins, 1991.
Sounds.
Learners are taught letter-sound correspondences, how sounds blend together to form words, and to notice sounds in words. Learners then use these strategies to read and recognize written words. This is exactly what my mother and I did on the chalkboard. Why did she think starting there was a good idea? Because the book said to, and that's how I learned to read. Similarly, Hawkins, 1991, notes that many teachers start this way because it just seems like the natural place to start. Freeman and Freeman, 2008, state that phonics proponents believe that when a learner successfully reads a word out loud, the learner relates the written word to that word in his or her oral vocabulary. This helps the learner understand the meaning of the written word. Then, by an extension of that process, the learner comes to understand the meaning of the whole text. Freeman and Freeman, 2008. Hawkins, 1991. Okay, but many words in English don't follow phonics rules. How did I read those? Mom's response: "You just did, even 3 and 4 syllable words." My professional self was highly skeptical of this possibility. And what about words that I didn't have in my oral vocabulary? Did I actually understand what I was reading? You seem to. I mean, we didn't have complex discussions about character and plot development. We were 4. I still wasn't convinced. I remembered working with young readers who sounded out words beautifully, but understood very little about the meaning of the text. Because phonics rules are typically taught in a certain sequence, reading materials used in the phonics approach control for phonics rules by including only certain words at certain levels. Edgar, 2001, Hawkins, 1991. So maybe that accounted for my ability to read texts. I was reading carefully controlled texts. No, you were reading whatever was on your bookshelf. Aha! This was interesting. If this were a true phonics approach, approach, I wouldn't be reading such authentic materials. His sounded like the whole language approach to reading. As Edgar, 2001, describes the whole language approach, proponents of whole language believe that language serves personal, social, and academic aspects of children's lives, and that children become literate as they grapple with the meaning and uses of print in their environments. So, whereas the phonics approach starts with words and their letters and sounds, the whole language approach starts by considering a larger picture of reading, negotiating the meanings of a text. Freeman and Freeman, 2008. From this viewpoint, Freeman and Freeman, 2008, note learners need to use multiple strategies to create meaning. Phonics is only one of these strategies, and not the primary. Learners also draw upon their background knowledge and other knowledge about language to help them understand a text. For example, they make predictions about what will happen in a text and refine those predictions as they read. While learners examine words in phonics rules, they do this in the context of reading. Edgar, 2001, Freeman and
10
Freeman,
million people in the
2008.
house, 7 million.
Beginning readers use
Please
authentic
like and
materials
share,
like
please.
children's literature and learner-created texts because only
And
through
subscribe.
encountering and attempting to deal with real texts and functions of literacy can children learn effective strategies and techniques for understanding and using them themselves. Edgar, 2001. So these books that I was reading, were they books that I had read before with my parents? Were they on
Hello,
topics that I
Kyle.
had some knowledge about?
Thank you.
Probably. You constantly had a book in
I'll
your
go
hand,
back to you.
starting from when you were about 6 months old, and we read to you every night. Now we were definitely into whole language approach territory. This fit with Krashen's ideas about comprehensive high-frequency academic vocabulary word list. Here's a list of 100 high-frequency academic vocabulary words. These are words you will find most commonly in high-level readings and university-level courses. Remember that the context of each word can change the meaning drastically, so make sure you use your text and a dictionary for reference. Acquisition adequate alternative analysis approach. Appropriate area aspects assessment.
adequate
authority
alternative
categories,
analysis
complex components,
approach,
business construction,
appropriate
consumer core
area
corresponding,
aspects
considerable
assessment
derived dimensions,
authority.
distribution, distinction, domestic, dominant economic elements, emerged, error,
So,
estimate,
you read
evaluation,
fast.
evidence excluded, export factors, financial focus, formula, framework, function.
Wait, I'm going to read it for you. Acquisition, adequate alternative analysis approach, appropriate area aspects assessment. Bye. Thank you, Kyle. Authority, categories, commission, complex components, considerable, construction, consumer, core, corresponding, considerable, derived, dimensions, distribution, distinction, domestic, dominant, economic, elements, emerge, error, estimate, evaluate, evidence, excluded, export, factors, financial, focus, formula, framework, function, funds, goals, granted, hypothesis, identified, implies, implication, indicate, instance, integration, interaction, interpretation, involved issues. Institute, journal, label, layer, legislation, link, maintenance, major, maximum, mechanism, method, negative, normal, obtain, abuse, occur, outcomes, overall, parameters or parameters, partnership, percent, pace, policy, positive, potential, predicted, reviews, primary, principal, procedure, percent, pace, policy, positive, potential, predicted, previous, primary, principal, procedure, process, proportion, reaction, registered, relevant, resolution, resources, required, research, retain, skim, select, shift, significant, similar, suit, specified, specific, status, stages, structure, subsequent, sufficient, some, test, techniques, text, theory, traditional, transfer. Okay. 100 most frequent words in English. The, and, he, with, be, from, but, can, your, how, which, will, them, this, see, more, did, number, than, down. Of, is, was, as, it, or, some, out, when, said, do, way, would, her, him, they, my, whole, said. Then we have to, it, for, I, one, had, what, other, up, on, there, about, right, into, to, could, sound, over, first, been, and, you, on, his, have, by, there, where, use, each time, many, like, make, has, go, no, new, no, ah, that, are, they, this, not, we, oh, world, she, f, then, so, thing, look, come, most, water, main part. Hmm. Hmm. I need to take a test now. Let's try. What kind of learning does a scarecrow represent? One who thinks the reading is a waste of time and so does not enjoy cooking movies or interact. One who does not have enough background, good predictions while reading so often cannot. One who is respectful to the teacher. Passive, okay. I think the scarecrow represent uh, one who doesn't know background. Okay, about 85% of communication is done with as little as blank. Mm, not this, not this. Okay, wait. What does Story believe is important to while reading? Mm, predict what happens next. Read and compare information in the article. Ask questions while reading is also good. Read from left to right. Reading critically. Think critically while reading. Of course, can be. Which of this is not a danger of focusing on phonics? Mm, language is not connected to meaning or culture. Mhm. Hello. Most of reading researchers agree that good readers have greater ability to focus on the meaning instead of sound. Then they are good at predicting lections and then move their fingers across the as they read. It's also good, okay. Uh, cat you. Oh no. Huh? Mm. Mm-hmm. Hello, 6 million in the house. Mm-hmm. Where is my notebook? Where is my other bag? Oh, got 10. Thank you. Welcome. Oh, perhaps I need to go back to the, it says, go back to the, Dorothy and Scarecrow. Hello. Good morning, Milts Lagrimas. Hello, good morning. How are you? I'll give you, mostly guys, no, they are from, most of my watchers are from USA. Good evening. I'm from the Philippines. Yes, from Mercanti ka po. Pilipino ka pala, Mills. Dito po ako sa Pilipinas. Actually, ano po ako, Metro Manila. May channel ka ba, Mills? Babalikan kita mamaya. Mag-comment ka dyan sa, sa baba. Mag-comment ka sa, comment section. Babalikan kita mamaya. Hello, 9 million in the house. Wait. I said, stay away, cities. Oh, okay. Hi, Mike. Hello. Good evening, Mike from the Philippines. Where are you from? Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to teaching what is the actual letters and the accompanying sounds that are giving the reader problems. This reader simply doesn't know how to decode the letters.
Start from the very beginning. A very good place to start. Got it?
Maybe I should get off this pole and take a seat.
Hi, Ashi.
Maybe we should start again. Perhaps we should start from the very beginning. A very good place to start.
Wrong.
Anyway, do you have automatic recognition skills?
You mean, do I understand what I see? Not much. I think That sound is an O, and that Z sound is like a B, buzzy.
Yes, very good. And that is a
Mm.
start. This sound does make an O, especially when followed by other vowels such as A or U, like boat or though, or when followed by a consonant and
Mm.
an E, such as tote or moat. But it also has a short sound, ah, usually when followed by a consonant.
Mm.
Short sound. And is Z a consonant?
Yes, great job.
Then,
Vocabulary and structural knowledge?
hmm, I guess I don't have that either.
Ah,
How many
Asia.
words do I need
Okay.
to know?
Let's start
All
small.
right. So,
About 85% of all
mm,
communication is done with as little as 2,000 words.
we're in
2,000
Asia,
words?
Mike.
Is that a little?
Compared to the more than 60,000
I'm here
words
in the
college professors might
Philippines,
know.
and you are
But don't worry,
from
we'll get there eventually.
Philippines also, I
In
think.
fact, in the back of this book, there's some vocabulary builders called word lists that we'll want to look at. Now,
Mm-hmm.
how about your formal
What are
discourse
you
structural
doing?
knowledge?
I'm actually a
Do you
multitasking.
know the difference between the different kinds of genres? For example, the difference
If you
between,
can hear from
say,
the
letter, an
background, I
email, or a
am
text.
listening to picture.
Yes, I know a little. I mean, a text is short. You can
Now
use
kausap, I
emoticons.
think.
Is that important?
Well, for good reading, sometimes you need to know the common tropes, the
Mm.
common collocations, transitions, all of that.
Don't know all of that. I don't even know what tropes and collocations
Mhm.
mean.
Well, it's just the rules of the game.
Mhm.
So much good reading comes from knowing these rules so that you can predict what's coming up. Let me think of an example of how to predict. Do you have any world background knowledge?
Thank
Okay,
you.
let me make this easier. Like if I said crows are, you might finish the sentence by saying,
Pesky corn-eating robbers.
perfect. So you do have some
Mm.
world knowledge, and that can help you as you read to know what is likely coming up next. If a reading said something like the different kinds of energy, for example,
Mm.
you might immediately think of fossil fuel, solar energy, nuclear, and
Wind?
exactly. That is the strategy of prediction. And prediction comes from both world and discourse knowledge. You know, that isn't the only kind of strategy I want you to think about. There are
Oh,
many different important reading strategies.
You mean like reading from left to right or
now
from up to
put them together.
Sort of.
Mm-hmm.
How about like moving your finger across a page? I can totally do that.
I guess that's a strategy. But there are even more strategies to think about, such as the ability to read
Hmm.
and then compare that information from multiple sources. So think critically as you read. Here is a big strategy.
Yes.
Question.
True.
Asking questions is a strategy. Oh, Scarecrow, you've been asking me questions this whole time. Don't you see how that has helped you have a
Ah,
discussion with me?
Mike, is
Those
this
questions
your
can
channel?
lead you down a path
I
to
will
some
go back to you
amazing discoveries.
later.
They can get you thinking and
Subscribe.
can
Thank you so
definitely
much
help
for
you discover the
subscribing.
perfect answer
I will
in
go
your
back
reading.
to you
I
later.
think you're going to be a fabulous reader.
How about that? Asking questions is a strategy. I didn't even know. I thought I was just being. Can I see your book for a second?
Your way.
Hmm. About scarecrow readers.
Some things that you know. And there are some things.
Hmm.
He doesn't lack knowledge. He doesn't recognize the importance of reading as a physical skill.
Reading is physical.
Reading is interactivity. Reading
I am,
is
multitasking. Reading, studying, doing, tasks.
Okay. And the last student.
Our last student is perhaps the most common reader you will encounter. He is, let's say,
Mhm.
uninterested.
Uninterested. Wait.
Bye, Mike. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ba't hindi sinasabi naman kung ilan ang ano? Sinabi ko ilan ang ano eh. So, you back in. Thank you, Mike. What do you do? Just watching on YouTube. Do you have channel, Mike? Mm. Oh, thank you. Oh, you're at work. You're at work and you have time to watch. Hmm. What did you do? I'm 22 years old. Oh, you're very young. What did you do? Bye. Stay safe. Naku. 6. Thousand. Mm. 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 Bagsak pa rin. 2,000, ganun. Mm. Dalawa lang pala ang ano dun. Mm. Ay, wait. Dalawa lang pala sa dito. Oh. Tama, 2,000. Hmm. Asan yung tamang sagot? Mali ito, mali. So, God. Ayun. Yung tumama sa sagot. Wala.
Really interested in moving, aren't you? This looks like it's going to be harder than teaching the scarecrow. Are you even going to respond to me?
Not sure.
Excuse me? Are those words coming out of your mouth?
Not sure why.
Not sure why. Not sure why? Let me tell you why. First of all, you're holding this book upside down.
Oh. Well, I'm still not sure it's important to be talking to you. Can't you see? I'm reading.
That's exactly why you should be talking to me. I'm a teacher.
Reading is a solitary sport. It isn't meant to be done in groups. Please, go away.
You're so wrong. Reading is precisely the kind of sport that should be done with others. In fact, even when you're reading by yourself, it is not something that should be done.
Whatever do you mean?
Listen, reading is an active sport. It's like a conversation. It involves your mind and the mind of the writer interacting with each other. It involves you asking questions, predicting, thinking about the text, and evaluating what you think about the reader's inputs.
Hmm.
Well, highly unlikely. I would much rather stay here, read whatever this book says, and go back to staring at that tree over there. But for the sake of fun, let's pretend that reading is an active sport. What sport would it be?
I'd say it would be a lot like tennis, with two people on opposite sides of the net. So the writer serves you the ball, which is conversation, an idea, and your job is to respond to that ball, agree or disagree, evaluate if you think it is true, or share your like or dislike. What the writer is saying.
That does sound like work. But are you sure that is absolutely necessary? I still think I could just sit down and read my book without having to do anything.
Then you are missing out on the exciting part of what you're actually reading. Let me ask you, what are you reading?
Some boring story of a man who goes to an island called Utopia. Pretty dry stuff, really.
Thomas More's Utopia? That's a fabulous book to talk about and to think about. It's not boring at all. If you do some work.
You say.
For example, have you ever imagined what a perfect world might look like? A perfect society?
You mean like there would be no rain? I hate rain. It makes me rust.
Exactly. To you, a perfect world would be one without rain. What else?
Lots of trees. I love to chop down trees and make houses.
Good. In fact, you may have something in common with the utopians. You believe that everyone should farm and build houses, including the king. You see, thinking about a perfect society, perfect place, is exactly what Thomas More was doing when he wrote that book, Utopia, which is Latin for perfect society.
Still sounds like a bore.
Thomas More was nothing of the sort. He worked hard fighting against the king in England and even got beheaded for standing up with him. Part of his dislike for kings you can find in this book, which he wrote in 1816.
Beheaded? That is pretty cool. I'd love to read that part. But are you saying I can have a conversation with a guy who died hundreds of years ago?
That is exactly what I'm saying. And More's ideas have been influencing people all over the world, even today, to help us with people, property, culture, politics, you name it. You know, when I was younger, I used to think a perfect world would be filled with color and adventure. Now, all I want to do is get back to my family. For me, family is an important part of a perfect society. Do you think Moore felt the same way?
No.
So, we've just learned that there are 54 cities in Utopia, and it was originally part of the continent. But the king decided to have a river to divide the country from the continent, so they could live a life away from others.
I can certainly understand that. I much prefer to live by myself. But surrounded by water everywhere, that is not the place for me. Ooh. But I do love the part where they talk about raising chickens, so that they could be surrounded at their feet and become acclimatized to their environment. I do love chickens, and that way I could get eggs whenever I wanted.
Any other things you like or dislike? I asked you to underline everything that stood out to you.
Let's see. Yes. I like that they only work 6 hours. Really hard. I like the idea of working hard in short, focused bursts.
You do?
Yes. Don't you believe me? I can work hard, at least when properly motivated. I just rust easily. I also like that they gave sick people first choice of getting food. To be honest, that's
What do you think of the fact that in Utopia, slaves?
At first, I hated the idea. But then I saw that cheaters, people who cheated or on their wives or broke the law, became slaves and had to work hard to pay the price. I think that is a smart thing to do in society. It was like a prison system, really. And if they cheated again, well, they were executed. It seems strict, but ultimately fair.
Sounds like you have a lot of opinions on this book, and I'm glad. You know what I'd like to do next?
You're not going to gloat, are you? So you were right. Reading is more fun when you think of it as an active process.
No, I'm not going to gloat too much. What I want to do is invite others to share these
Hey.
ideas and see what they think. And I'd like us to do a few activities.
More activities with others. Why is everything so active with you?
Hey, trust me. First, I want you to hear other people's opinions about how they agree or disagree with Mr. Moore and evaluate what you, each of you, like about his model. And then I want you to design your perfect utopian society and tell me what the people in your society do, think, and feel. I'll be honest. I bet you could create a society that would be even more interesting than Mr. Moore's.
I agree. Make my own society.
Yes! Here you go.
Oh, I already have some wonderful ideas. I know exactly what I would do.
Okay, wait. I'm excited too, but let's hold on. Let's talk with the other readers first.
Welcome back to Teach English Now. After spending time with Dorothy and the Tin Man, I hope you were able to identify certain strategies that Dorothy used in order to overcome the Tin Man's inability to move. You may encounter a number of learners similar to the Tin Man. Learners who do not connect reading with active strategies, with movement, and with a need to actually engage a text. These learners, in short, need to see reading as interactive and should be engaged not only with the text, but with others around them as well. Almost all lovers of books had a teacher that opened books and reading to them. And we want you to seriously consider the importance of your ability to make reading, by the very nature of your questions and your strategies, come alive. When thinking of reading as an interactive process, you might want to consider looking at reading in terms of a very simple tripartite structure. Active reading will generally involve pre-reading, reading, and post-reading activities. In this way, you will immediately see that reading is not just a solitary activity, but can be enhanced by the teacher and the class all throughout the process. Let's talk first about pre-reading activities. Did you notice that Dorothy invited the Tin Man to think about himself and his position on things? In other words, Dorothy connected the Tin Man's prior knowledge and opinions to the text. The use of "have you ever" questions allowed her to do this. Dorothy also provided background information to the Tin Man, all in an effort to increase interest and motivation. Again, special detail was spent connecting what the Tin Man might like. She talked about Thomas More getting beheaded, for example, as a way to make the text feel more relevant, current, or fresh. Other pre-reading techniques might involve pre-teaching vocabulary, telling a personal story that is similar to the reading, or showing pictures of the author or the reading. All of this, when done well, can create support and interest for the reader. As students read, there are also a number of activities that can be performed to make reading come alive. A teacher might invite students to look for certain key facts, take notes, or highlight interesting sections to share later in the class. Even stop after certain points to meet with a partner and discuss the reading or predict what might happen next. And for groups that need a lot of support, you might want to read aloud or reading circle, wherein there are numerous techniques, such as choral reading, small group, leader and response, male and female turn-taking, filling in the missing word, and so forth. Furthermore, there are powerful teacher techniques, such as pausing, asking questions, inviting students to predict or share opinions, and these techniques can have a way of opening up a book to students' minds and imaginations. As an aside, theorists often discuss the importance of schema building when discussing reading. Schema building, in a sense, is what helps students predict well, which is, in turn, what helps students to read well. Schemata, plural for schema, is, in short, a packet of information or knowledge. These packets of knowledge are what help you to know what you are reading. Consider, for example, that in a story like Utopia, The chapters are actually organized according to packets of information that people can understand.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Moore decides to focus on geography, politics, occupations, and customs. Each of these topics, geography, politics, occupations, will immediately open up different ideas and concepts to different students.
Mm-hmm.
Some students may have studied customs, for example, just a little, and may only think about a few things when a teacher invites them to predict what is meant by customs.
Mm.
Food, music, dance. But others will have a fuller, deeper picture of what customs mean.
Mm-hmm.
Rites of passage, wedding and funeral traditions, religion, symbol. A wise teacher recognizes that a reading can be used to discover learners' previously built schemata and introduce students to new schemata. Finally, after a reading is done, you aren't done. There is so much that students can learn upon finishing. For example, now is the opportunity for learners to apply, synthesize, and evaluate a reading. It is also a chance for teachers to assess what a student was able to comprehend and recall. Notice that Dorothy wanted the Tin Man to evaluate in groups and get ideas that might help him with the final activity. And notice that the activity she created, Make Your Own Model Society, was yet again another way to share a learner's own views in contrast to Moore's. Thus, post-reading activities are perfect places to do wrap-up activities that focus on main ideas and evaluative questions. It is often with post-activities where you can really show how active reading can be. Think about how powerful these words are when it comes to creating a post-reading activity. Do, choose, transfer, answer, condense, extend, duplicate, model, and convert. To sum up, let me say it again. Reading is an interactive process, and the teacher can help
Reading is
students
an
with readings by preparing
interactive process.
pre-reading, reading, and post-reading activities.
Pre-reading, reading,
activities
and
might include
post-reading.
Have you ever questions, providing background information, and asking students to predict. Reading activities might include taking notes, highlighting, stopping to discuss with a neighbor, and inviting students to read in groups. Post-reading activities can invite learners to summarize, evaluate, or as in the case of the Tin Man, recreate a model society. In our next video, we'll discover our last non-reader, one whose love of technology and self
That's a perfect picture. Ooh, this is totally going on my Instagram.
The lion reader.
The flowers, you're all so pretty in your own way.
I'm sorry. Am I interrupting something?
Oh, who are you?
Hi, I'm Dorothy, and I'm a teacher. I'm going to teach you how to read.
But I don't need to read. Who told you that? I'm totally happy right here in my field. And now if you excuse me, I have important things to do.
But you're just laying around in a field staring at flowers.
Important things to do. I have 10,000 followers who agree.
Followers?
Yes, on my blog. A Lion's Life in Pictures. I pose with flowers. I love flowers. Oh, there are posies and pansies and poppies. I have a whole album on poppies. See?
Are you doing duck lips there?
Maybe. So, why should I read?
Fair question. I guess, well, you don't have to learn, but no, I hate to have you miss out on another 10,000 followers.
Oh, I'm listening.
Well, so I was just looking through your blog here, and it seems like you're missing out on a wonderful opportunity to share your experiences with your readers. These are just pictures, and you mostly write the same caption in each one. Lion with a puppy, lion with a pansy, lion with a... I just think we can do better than this.
But how will that get me more followers?
Here's how it'll work. I want to write a story. And that story will have a star. And that star is you.
Ow,
story about you and your love of nature and flowers. And then you're going to read it to me, with me, and tell me what I need to add and revise.
A story about me? Well, I never. What will my mother say? She'll be thrilled.
And not just your mother. We'll post that story to your blog, and people will get to learn even more about the exciting things that you're doing. So, are you ready to tell me your story? Tell me a little bit about flowers.
Well, I think it started when I was a kid. Oh, you see, I have a terrific nose. You know, for smelling. I could tell the difference.
All right. We posted it to your blog. How do you like it?
I loved it. Are you kidding? I have never really had a teacher take an interest in me like that.
You're so welcome. I was just wondering, though, if you might be interested in reading anything else.
I knew it. You tricked
very
me into thinking
end.
you cared. Now you just want to
Very
force me into
end.
reading your icky literature.
Oh, Ryan, you know that I care. In fact, that's why I found a book that might be of particular interest to you.
Wait, you found a book?
I sure did. And in fact, a few books. So I was thinking about your love of flowers and how much you love nature. So I thought you might be interested in reading a little bit more about the natural world.
Oh, can I see it? Oh, wow. Let me see it. Oh, I didn't even know that there were trees. That's amazing. And cactus flowers. Did you know that the saguaro cactus flowers pollinated at night by the long-nosed bat?
I can honestly say that I didn't know that.
Wow. You know, I'd love to travel to all of these places.
Well, Lion, that leads me to a proposition.
What's that?
You see, there's this amazing place. You might have seen the signs. The Emerald City.
Why would I want to go there?
So the Emerald City, you see, has one of the best gardens in all of the world. It has over 2,000 different kinds of flowers.
2,000? That is amazing. Do you know how many selfies that would be?
Right. So I was thinking, after you studied a little bit more about the Emerald City Garden, here's the brochure, maybe we could take a little trip there.
Yes. Oh, wow. I would love to go. But before we journey with our feet, would you mind if I read?
Sure, Lion. Let's journey with our minds first.
Welcome back to Teach English Now. Let's have a discussion about what we just learned from Dorothy's attempts to help out the lion. The lion represents perhaps our most modern student. Many students, especially teenage students, are still finding themselves, have particular interests, and may or may not have a love of reading. To be honest, you will encounter a lot of readers that simply don't see themselves in the material you're presenting. Whereas the scarecrow may lack the skills to read, and the Tin Man fails to see reading as interactive, this kind of learner might be called the unengaged learner. What do you do with students who just don't care? Well, let's look at what Dorothy did to help our unengaged
I'm already
lion.
sleepy.
First of all,
Take a nap.
try immediacy. By immediacy, we mean that you focus on the here and now, on the context that the learners themselves are most familiar
While
with.
listening to the audio.
One useful technique born out of a theory called the language experience approach demonstrates that reading selections that are generated from life experiences of the students are more interesting and engaging. In essence, the teacher's listens to students, writes down their experiences, and then the students, who are quite familiar with the experience, notice, for example, that Dorothy sat down.
Hello. Oh.
She wrote a story about it and had the lion read and post a story on his wall. I remember the first time I learned this writer's trick in 6th grade. I told a story to my 6th grade class called Room 18 at the Jungle Safari. And I had each student star in one of the adventures within my small story. I remember how each student was huddled around me as I told my story. And I realized the reason why. Students love to hear about themselves. And that is one of the strengths of the language experience approach. And the language experience approach has another added benefit, especially for English as a second language learners. After a teacher constructs a story about a student or students, you can use the story to reinforce phonics, punctuation, syntax, and vocabulary. In other words, because students are familiar with the story, the English becomes easier to comprehend. And students are more likely to work through the difficulties of the English to understand the story in its entirety. So our first tip, make things personally meaningful and immediately useful. Remember our word, immediacy. Second of all, try autonomy. By autonomy, we mean that you allow students to find literature that reflects their current interests and ideas. You may wish to provide lists and give suggestions, but within certain limits, you are allowing at times your students to explore on their own and find items of high interest. You will find that a number of ESL textbooks already make predictions on what the authors believe are high interest topics. And you should consider carefully what these experts think your learners will be interested in. However, every once in a while, you will run across that one difficult reader, that one student that doesn't seem interested in what everyone else in the class is interested in. And may I suggest that you start doing a little exploring. Find out the learner's hobbies, interests, and background, and then find books and other reading materials that might best suit what that reader might be interested in. You may discover that as you find literature that reflects that one student, that student will respond in a remarkable way. Did you see how our lion lit up with excitement when he realized that Dorothy had specifically looked for books just for him? Remember, when trying to help a non-engaged reader, sometimes giving them some autonomy over their reading is just the thing. Fine. Try future authenticity. By authenticity, we mean that the readings that you give can and should come from the real world whenever possible. ESL teachers are always using real items like travel brochures, menus, maps, and so forth. By future authenticity, refer to the idea that you should be giving students information that is not only real, but that they can imagine using for future contexts and situations. For example, giving them a reading or a script about going to a restaurant in London only makes sense if they can imagine themselves going to London. If you can help sell the idea of a future context to them, the more likely they will be willing to read the story. Often, when selling a future context, I will begin a reading by saying something like, "Some of you will someday go to this place. It is an amazing place. Let me tell you about it." Or, if I'm talking about a future event, I might say, "Have any of you ever imagined what it is like to be in a movie? I'll bet someone here someday will be on TV. Maybe even a star like the person we're going to read about." So, did Dorothy do any activities that involved an authentic future context? Do you remember that Dorothy invited the lion to go to the Emerald City, and the reading she gave him, a brochure, was authentically and personally related to a future trip they were planning to take? Pretty impressive. By the way, planning a trip around a reading is a great way to ensure future authenticity. So there you have it. Dorothy tried immediacy, autonomy, and future authenticity to engage the non-engaged reader. Immediacy, as we have defined it, means to use a student's own story and context in the readings you present. Autonomy means to allow students some freedom to choose material they might be interested in. And future authenticity means to give learners a reading that can speak to a real future context. easier way to think about this is that non-engaged readers are often most interested in themselves, immediacy, others like them, autonomy, and then the larger world around them, future context. Think of it as three concentric circles: self, others, and the world. Well, that is a lot of information, and we've now arrived at the end of our yellow brick road, or at least the end of our first module. In the next video, we'll make sure to review and summarize all of that information that is certain to be dancing around in your head. Stay with us as we clarify. And thanks again for joining us on Teach Session.